There's a moment in every serious transformation when something shifts. Not externally, internally. A moment where quitting no longer feels like relief. It feels weak. That's when quitting stops being an option. Most people think discipline is about forcing yourself every day. It isn't. Discipline is temporary force. Identity is permanent gravity. As long as discipline feels like force, quitting remains available. You can negotiate, you can delay, you can excuse. But there's a stage where those sentences lose power. Not because motivation increases, because identity hardens. At first you are trying to be disciplined. Then you become someone who is disciplined. That difference changes everything. When discipline is something you do, it's optional. When discipline is who you are, quitting becomes self-betrayal. And self-betrayal feels worse than discomfort. Most people never reach this shift. They live in effort mode. Effort mode is unstable. Effort requires energy. Energy fluctuates. Identity doesn't. Identity operates below emotion. It doesn't ask how you feel. It dictates behavior automatically. When quitting stops being an option, there's no cinematic moment, no announcement, no speech. You just wake up and execute. No debate, no internal negotiation. You move, because that's what you do, and that's who you are. The brain builds self-concept from repeated behavior, not intention, not desire, repetition. Every time you continue despite resistance, you cast a vote. One vote means nothing. 1,000 votes become identity. Identity creates internal pressure. Humans act in alignment with who they believe they are. If you believe you are inconsistent, you protect that belief. If you believe you are disciplined, you protect that too. That's why the early stage is fragile. You haven't cast enough votes. Your identity is still negotiable. That's where quitting feels easy. But once repetition accumulates, quitting becomes cognitively painful. Not because it's hard, because it contradicts who you've become. The brain tolerates discomfort. It resists identity collapse. When quitting stops being an option, the cost of quitting is higher than the cost of continuing. That cost is internal. Self-respect. Most people chase money. What they actually lack is self-trust. Self-trust is built when you do what you said you would do, especially when you didn't feel like it. Self-trust compounds quietly. Once it compounds, you become dangerous. Because now you don't rely on motivation, you rely on proof. Breaking self-trust feels worse than fatigue. When quitting stops being an option, you stop asking, should I? You start asking, how? You stop asking, do I feel like it? You ask, when do I start? Routine becomes sacred because routine protects identity. Identity protects execution. Execution protects future. When quitting is still an option, discipline feels heavy. When quitting is no longer an option, discipline feels neutral. Not inspiring, not exciting, expected. Expectation removes drama. No drama means stability. Stability means compounding. Most people live emotionally. Up when inspired, down when tired. Strong when validated, weak when ignored. When quitting stops being an option, you detach from emotional weather. Rain doesn't change routine. Sun doesn't change routine. Mood doesn't change routine. That's maturity, not age. Emotional neutrality. You cannot think your way into this stage. You must outlast your doubt. Doubt fades when evidence accumulates. Not external evidence, internal proof. Proof that you continued. Proof that you didn't break. At some point, you don't feel heroic, you feel calm. Calm consistency is unstoppable. Explosive effort burns out. Calm effort compounds. When quitting stops being an option, you stop needing motivation. You stop needing hype. You stop needing reminders. You embody discipline. And once you embody it, shortcuts lose appeal. Intensity is irrelevant. Continuity wins. Most people romanticize early pain. They underestimate long silence. But quitting stops being an option only after silence, after boredom, after invisibility, after doubt, after no applause, after continuing anyway. And one day you notice something. Quitting doesn't feel available anymore. Not because you're trapped, because you're aligned. Alignment removes negotiation. Negotiation removes hesitation. Hesitation removes momentum. Momentum builds inevitability. And inevitability is the final stage of discipline. Not force, not hype, not emotion. Inevitability. You continue because stopping feels foreign. And when stopping feels foreign, you've crossed the threshold.